Well, there's something you don't see very often. That gear is completely and utterly shattered and split and horrible. Let's crack on. Hello, and welcome to another Mr. Betamax video, and this one's a little bit different insofar as we're looking at a high hours, or relatively high hours, SLO-1700. Now, I have featured a low hours machine, and indeed we actually changed the lamps and the VU meters not so long ago. So yeah, a few of these on the channel already. And more to come as well, so keep an eye out and subscribe so you don't miss those. But yeah, it's very high hours. You can probably see maybe that the hours meter is just all over the place. Although, having said that, there is a mark there. Something going on weird here. There is a mark there, so maybe this isn't so bad. But yes, these incidentally, it's actually missing the metal, and basically it goes here and then it sort of splits and goes either side of the actual mercury filled glass capsule and back up the other side. It's a 2000 hour meter, and made by Fuji Ceramics. It's TM2. I think it's a TM22 something. 2000-2000. If you want to try and find them, they do occasionally crop up here and there as 5,000 hour version, 500 hour version. Yeah, so they do crop up, but obviously they're new old stock. So yeah, it's not something you can really get today, as far as I'm aware. I mean, if you know of anything like this that's still available, this mercury type meter, let me know in the comments. But I've struggled to find them. So yeah, so that's that. This machine I bought back in April of this year from eBay from a great guy by the name of Alex. Hi Alex, hopefully you'll be watching this. Yes, as you know, if you watch the meter lamp changing video, we did have a quick look at it, and it was struggling because basically the gear that's on the motor there, or the pulley that's on the motor there, is well and truly, it's just completely and utterly fallen apart. And just see, it's just crumbling. So I had a look around today, and I have actually found another. This does actually have a slight crack in it, but I'm going to go with it anyway. Push that on. And it's got to go on far enough that the height is about right. It's a little bit high. Yeah, that's about right. It's not awfully critical, but yeah, you want to get it about right. So that's that. You can actually see little marks on the top of it. I don't want to make it out on the camera. Where I actually very carefully prise this out with the blade of a screwdriver. So yeah, so I'll just get a belt. We'll pop that on, and yeah, we'll give it a try. Okay, so I have a new belt, and these are actually new belts, which I bought not that long ago. It's probably 2019, so it's far enough. That's long enough ago. Now, what is slightly odd, while I just try and get this belt to sit correctly, is it is actually in the laced position. And the other thing that's slightly odd, and I've not seen this on these decks, or this type of deck, it's B2, 711 B2, the plastic guides. So there's one here, the end guide, and this end guide has a plastic head to it. Not too sure I'm a fan of that, but anyway, it's lasted, I suppose. Now, the deck, a few interesting things or bits of trivia about these decks. It's an HF100 drum, but the deck itself is actually, essentially it's a C9, pretty much exactly the same as a C9. The differences are, see here, there's no record inhibit switch. Now in theory you could put one in, and there are details in the manual of how you can stop the machine recording, so you could actually use a switch from a C9 to make it so it does actually inhibit recording if the tab's knocked out. So one thing to watch out if you do have one of these, that regardless of whether the tab's in or out, it will record. So yeah, don't knock it by mistake. The other thing that's odd about this machine, and I need to look into why this is, the other SLOs that I've worked on, when you power them on, they automatically come on and not in standby. But this one comes on in standby. You have to turn it on. So I don't know whether that's maybe because this is a later deck, which maybe is why these are different. I don't know. It still seems a bit strange. But yeah, we'll compare serial numbers and just see. Okay, so just done a quick comparison on serial numbers, and this one is 200, and that one's 202. So that's 200, and then 3 more numbers. That's 202, and 3 more numbers, which I can't remember. But yeah, that signifies that these early ones maybe didn't have the power on from mains on. So that's interesting. I mean, it's sort of, maybe that was something that was changed in later versions because it made sense. You know, at the end of the day, you have a master kill switch to power everything off, and then next day, master kill switch, put it on, everything's ready to go. Just press eject, put your tapes in for the duplication work day. So yeah, but quite interesting. It's a little nugget there, really. So otherwise, it's very much sort of HF100 come C9 panel-wise. See down there, there's a double-sided board there for that's the servo side of things. Very reminiscent of a C9. But then you've got these boards here, or this board here, which is sort of cobbled together. This is all just audio here, pretty much. Hi-fi and then the linear. The other thing with these is they are hi-fi stereo. They're also linear stereo with beta noise reduction. And that's what makes these machines so good, that you can actually record tapes with both linear audio and stereo audio and beta hi-fi stereo audio all at once. And yeah, it's great. I have given it a bit of a clean. It was pretty grubby. And it's been well loved. It's seen life, and I've actually given it a pretty good clean up, but there's still lots more to do. And one thing that was a bit sad is it had some gaffer tape, or like carpet tape, over here with something written on it. It had faded, but in taking that off, you can just see it's sucked out the colour from the paint there on the metal. So this is all metal. So yeah, but with that, I suppose the next thing is to do the most important part of any of our videos, and that's to check the mains plug. So let's do that next. Okay, so here goes. My guess is probably going to be a 3 amp. Oh, it's a 5 amp. Yeah, well, that's not terrible. The cable, I think, would be a 5 amp cable, so That's maybe, but that's fused to the cable. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a mains fuse in there, so which is I actually know what that is. 3.15 amp slow blow. So yeah, that's fine. But yeah, I'm happy with that. It's actually not too bad with the wiring either. Do with more length on the blue, just so you've got a little bit of redundancy. But yeah, great, super. Let's crack on. So I'm going to plug it in, and yeah, you can see it's seen life because the LEDs are actually quite dull, quite tired. So I'm going to power it on, or take it out of standby. Well, I didn't quite expect that to go so well. So, wear-wise, you see there's a fair bit of wear there, but it's not terrible. I've seen plenty worse, like on HF 100s and whatever. So I'm sort of hoping that maybe it's not too bad. Could do with a bit more of a clean, so I might do that next, and then we'll try a cassette. Those meters still look great. Okay, so random cassettes. Ooh, struggles a bit. Right, so it looks like we might have a bad Hall effect. Having said that, we actually have nothing at all. I would expect it. I would expect the real motors to run, and they're not. So I am going to place a bet now that possibly that is going to be a popped fuse. So you can see it's whether it's actually just wondering. I've pressed pause, play and pause. Yeah, I don't think I've got any capstan either. So that means that tape is essentially stuck in there for now, which is okay. I can deal with that. So next thing is to take the bottom cover off. What I think about it, another thing that's interesting about these decks is they use the same sort of thin threaded screws that are used on a lot of the earlier beaters anyway, but the head is larger, so the standard that you see in domestic ones, you can barely get the head of this screwdriver in, but on these you can, and that is absolutely amazing. You can see there, so you can see. Same screw type, but yeah, just with a larger head on the top. How cool is that? So all opened up, and the Hall effect, it does have glue on it, but not a huge amount to be fair, but I will remove that anyway. It does look pretty crusty and horrible, and you can see here it's seen life. But here's the servo panel, and the resemblance with the C9 is very much just a passing resemblance. It's really, I mean, there are similarities, like the socket at the back here. This module rings a bell with the placement of that fuse, rings a bell. Not so sure about that one. I seem to remember there was one somewhere around here. I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head. But we've got a lot of extra panels and 3 processors there. It's quite cool. But one thing that occurred to me, and it is very dusty, I need to get the vacuum cleaner around this because it's incredibly dusty. Fair enough. I mean, relatively, it's not that bad at all. But one thing that occurred to me, it doesn't power on when, when you put the power on it, and I'm just wondering if that is part of the issue, or it's a symptom of something, and whether that is actually a power supply fault, which would be very interesting. There is, and I do need to look at the circuit diagram to tell you what this does. There is a small DC-DC converter of some description. I don't know what that does yet, but we'll have a look at that. But we do potentially have maybe issues with the actual power supply itself. So yeah, but I think the next thing really is if I get the meter on it, get the circuit diagram up, and yeah, we'll take it from there. So I thought I'd just check the fuses and or check what voltages are across them. I mean, the fuses themselves are fine, but we've got 12 volts across this one, both sides, 12 volts across this one, both sides. So that's a good start. I've checked everything else that tries to work. All the logic seems fine. So I'm sort of wondering, I mean, 9-volt rail, but from the top of my head, I believe some of the logic is powered by the 9-volt rail, so I'd assume that is there, but I will check it. Yeah, it's almost like the logic isn't properly controlling the servo somehow. Maybe there's something amiss there. So yeah, time to crack open the manual. Okay, so I'm going totally off the top of my head here, but on this red connector we should have brown is 5-ish volts, which it is, and then the red should be 9 volts. I don't appear to have a 9-volt rail, so I do need to check the manual. I'm just doing this to to see how much I can remember. But yeah, there appears to be no 9-volt rail. So yeah, well, that's something, if I'm right. Okay, so I've had a look at the manual, and I did get it a bit wrong. What I was actually measuring on the red connector here was actually the power on pulse. But what I actually meant to measure was we've got on pin 2 should be 9 volts. Now pin 1, I haven't got anything on pin 1 either. And pin 1 should be pin 1 should be I've lost it now. M-board. M-board is the can. So white, switch, red. Yeah, sorry. Pin 1 is ground, and pin 2 is the 9 volt. So yeah, I should have nothing on. Just make sure there's 2 wires there. Yes, there are. So that is the right one. So I've got no 9 volts. So that sort of is all right. So I suppose the next thing is to get the power supply out and see what's going on. When I think about it, you'll notice there is this can, and I've hinted on this a few times in this and previous videos. But this is actually a DC-DC converter, and it is actually supplying the minus 12 volt rail only. So that's all that does, and that is on this connector here. So red in this case is negative, and brown is positive because it's a negative rail. And you can see we've got a healthy minus 12 volt rail there. So yeah, that's what that does. And what's quite nice about it, I think it's quite low current as well. So if that does go, it's actually quite easy to use something like an XP unit, or I don't know, do some fun modern electronic equivalent to get that minus 12 volt rail. So yeah, it's no biggie. That's quite nice to know, actually. Pretty reliable machines as these things go. So yeah, cool. So time to get the power supply out. I will have to lift this board up as well because just like in the C9, the hinge is actually part of the power supply chassis and bracket. I have given this machine a good clean now as well, so it is cleaned right the way through. The only panel I haven't done is the panel. Oh no, I've done it all. I've done it all. So it's not spotless yet, but majority of the dust is out of it. So I'm really pleased with that. That's a good thing. So I'm going to position you there. And yeah, let's crack on. So I'm sort of doing this a bit blind, as far as I can't see what you're seeing. So I'll try and keep everything in shot. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I haven't looked at the manual, so I'm not cheating, but I assume this is going to be fairly easy to get out. I'm going to take the side panel off, and then 2 screws at the side of chassis, and at first glance it sort of looks like it's sort of a cross between the C9 and the HF100. So those screws actually self-tapping, and there is actually a little, well, it's actually going around anything. No, there is actually some tweezers, a little cable management wire that, oh no, it's a ground. Okay, so I'll leave that. Sorry, you can't see any of that. So yeah, that stays in, that's cool. So screw on the side here, again self-tapper. Then it looks like, yeah, again like C9, so it's got a split back. A lot of like the C2030, for example, has a complete solid or straight through back. This doesn't, so I should be able to undo these screws. And this screwdriver is not actually the best for this, but luckily they're not too tight. So a bit smaller. There we go. It's always a good idea to use the right screwdriver. So it's that screw. They're both the same. So this should start getting quite loose now. And I believe this will be the same type of screw again. Yeah, so that wants to come out. So next thing is to undo this board and swing it out the way so we can disengage it. Okay, so I've disengaged the board. I've just taken it out the hinge as well. So the only thing that's really keeping this in now is the cables. You can see there's some cable management there. So unplug all of these, and in true Sony style, they are color coded and unique to this panel. Now that one doesn't look. Oh, it is. Have a look at that in a minute, because it's a different type of socket. There we go. That was really quite stuck. Quite a different type of socket, that, but it does make it unique because, yeah, they decided to. I was going to say because they've already got a white 2-pin socket, but they haven't. So you see that's biased as well, so you can't get it the wrong way. All slightly to the left there. Interesting. Right, so I should be able to lift this out, I think. There we go. And you can see that that ground there. So let's get this off. So I've just freed these off a bit. Standard size, which is fine. So I'll remove those and we'll get the board out. Power supply. So this is the D board, so that's the M board, which is basically the power supply, and I think that's the F board. Does it say? Yeah, F board. So this is, off the top of my head, it's 12 volts and 5 volts, and that's it. The 9 volts is derived off this board using a very simple regulator sort of method of generating that voltage. And the regulator is actually under there, and it's in a clamp. So even with all the screws out, you can't remove this until you've slackened off the clamp. But what does sort of strike me is this is, I can demonstrate it one-handed, but it is actually quite loose. It's like the clamp isn't really very well fitted, not very tight. So I wouldn't be surprised, maybe it's just overheated. I mean, in an ideal world, wouldn't that be great? It's like, yeah, there's a reason for why it won't pop. You can see now the can. So I do actually have a C9 power supply unit to compare. So you can see there the differences. So this is where your DC-DC AC converter goes. So this is like your 36, I think it's 3644 and 3.6 AC. I think it says on the bottom. Sorry, minus 26, 38 volts. So tuning, AC 3.6 volts, I think that says. 3.6. Then you've got your 12 volts in. This, of course, is a completely different board, even though physically it's the same shape. And it certainly bears some resemblance. So, like these two caps here. But otherwise, it's pretty unique. Well, it is unique to this machine. Relay is in the same position, and so is the regulator. So, okay, so let's do some tests. I've just got this on diode at the moment. We'll just see what happens. So capacitor there. Capacitor charging. So that seems okay. Let's just compare it with the good one from the C9. I know this is good. Yeah, so that's fine. Okay, so I do have the circuit diagram for that part, and yeah, 9 volts is here. So we've got 9 volts regulator, which I've just checked. We've got a few other bits and bobs around that. One thing I'm looking for is a fusible resistor for that. This resistor, I can't quite get my head around why that's there. Because that is actually going down to ground. There's a relay. So there's your switched 12 volts. And then you switched 9 volts, which is actually 12 volts switching through to power on the 9 volt regulator circuit. The only thing I can think of is I wonder if we've got a problem with a capacitor. So maybe that capacitor there. Maybe it's worth putting 12 volts on the input to this, because it's just like 12 volts on pin 1 to then see what's going on with that circuit. I mean, it's such a simple circuit. It's really very, very simple. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Okay, so I've checked C657 and C658, and they both check low, which is fine, but I don't see any problem with that. One thing I'm slightly wondering is whether it's a relay. Because I noticed when I was sort of powering it on, the relay just sounded a bit like, a bit sort of lackluster in its operation. So, don't know. I think I will still put on the power supply and just give it 12 volts and just see what happens. Let's see if we get 9 volts out. If we do, then I'm probably going to say that it's the relay. I mean, we've got another one on the other board. No, we haven't, but I have got a relay somewhere that I can swap out. So yeah, let's do that. So I've changed this capacitor and this capacitor, which are to do with the 9 volt rail, and I also changed the 3 1000 microfarad 16 volt. These are actually 25 volt, but that's fine. I've also changed the 100 microfarad, which is on the negative 12 volt rail, just in case, because if that goes short, then obviously, or goes bad, it's going to damage this. I haven't been able to change these two 470 microfarad caps just because I've run out, and that was literally the last one I had for there. So, but that's fine. And I haven't changed these two either. They seem okay, so that's fine. But those 1000 microfarad caps, I don't know what you can see, they've all leaked. They're all going bad. So yeah, really, well, you can see on the one on the left there especially looks really crusty. But yeah, really glad I did those. Okay, so I've soldered on the power supply, variable power supply, onto the outputs of the relay. So the relay pins here. So when it comes out of standby, these pins are shorted by the relay and you get 9 volts. Basically, this is feeding 12 volts in to the 9 volts regulating circuit. I'm just having problems with the ground. I haven't got enough hands. So I'm going to go on the positive side of C658. And still not enough hands, even though I've soldered on everything. Let's give it some beans, and well, I'm not doing this very well. So you should see we have 9 volts. So that is happy. So I have to start to wonder if maybe that relay is bad somehow. It's obviously switching a 12 volt, but is it switching the 12 volt to 9 volt regulator circuit as well? So I think that's the next thing to test. Okay, so the relay's out, and I suppose no real surprise in some ways, but it is not enough hands. So that's good. And I mean, the contacts themselves seem good. So yeah, but that's making good contact. So yeah, that is actually fine. So it's a bit of a mystery. I mean, the only other thing I can think of is something loading up the 9 volt rail and making it cut out, but I don't know. Well, let's put it back together and give it a test, I suppose. Okay, so here goes. I've sort of put it back together, put most of the screws in. I haven't put the ones on the back yet, for example, but it's enough to test it. Put the ball back where it should be. I'm just really eager to see if there is any difference. I haven't really done a huge amount to sort of get it going, and like I say, I do wonder if maybe there's some sort of additional load on the 9 volt rail that's causing it to effectively shut down. But well, here goes. Let's power it on, and so far so good. And I still have nothing. So yeah, we still have issues with that 9 volt supply, but do we actually have issues? So let's just check those voltages again. Okay, so here goes 9 volts, and we still have no 9 volts. So I have found the issue, and it turned out to be this capacitor here, which I've now replaced, was dead short. Now, you could say I was way over the top in the way I diagnosed that 9 volt rail from the power supply. Sort of made the assumption that it was the power supply. 2 reasons why I did that. One is because I wanted to check that board anyway, but also I found it quite hard to believe that the fuse wouldn't blow with a dead short across the rail, and it was a dead short. Now the fuse, this is a new fuse. The old one, you could see it sort of, I don't know, you can quite see, but it has sweated. So it's obviously been stressing, but it didn't blow the fuse. Instead, it was putting down the regulator, shutting it down. So yeah, that's quite interesting. But basically, this is coming straight from the power supply on that top 3-pin white connector down to this red CN003 connector. And basically, I didn't even use the schematic. I just had a look at this, and you can actually see where it goes. So checked all these transistors and all the rest of it. There's very little that's actually on this before it starts getting into transistors, and you know, you're testing the transistors and all fine, everything checked fine. So, but my money was on this. They do tend to go quite commonly, I suppose, in Betamax machines, Sony's. So yeah, there we go. So let's just test the old one. Resistor, 0 ohms. It really is a dead short. Now the other thing as well, and I was always told, you don't mount capacitors like that because it can cause problems, and I just wonder if that's the case with this. I mean, obviously it was the other way, and I've straightened them to put them in a meter. With those, I've actually given a little bit of a gap before I've curled them round to then mount the capacitor. It does have one of these yellow sticky pads as well, which can get leaky with age and start conducting. And there are 3 separate links there. So what I've done is I've used a little bit of red tape, which is sort of gel-like, and it's literally, I've just put it on one of these metal links. So even if it does become conductive, it won't matter. It's not actually going to short out anything. So yeah, so I'm going to put this back together now, and then we'll give it a test. So I've sort of got it back together. I've got it in a state where we can try it anyway. Plugged in, all ready to go. Let's power it up. So far so good. And yeah, we got a little bit of a head rotation, so that's a good start. So a bit of slap there, so it's going to need a tape path clean, and probably the upper drum is going to be shiny as well. This sort of slapping can be a sign that the upper drum's a bit, or the drum is a bit worn. Let's press play, and there's no beta hi-fi. And we're having no audio show up on the meters. And no picture. Just very gently see if we can get anything. And the heads feel alright. It looks like we've got no video. I have to say, I don't know what's on this cassette. So I think what I'll do is I'll press eject, and we'll try a different cassette. Okay, so we know this one's a good one, and it's beta hi-fi as well. Oh, that struggled. It's right at the beginning of the cassette. So it's picking up beta hi-fi. It's quite low though, which is fair enough. And we do have a picture. Oh, it tracks out all right. I mean, sensor tracking. Sensor tracking. It should be really good. So there's obviously some tape alignment issues, but yeah, so furthest right, and then center, and furthest left. So yeah, not wonderful, but it's not bad either. And the hi-fi is hi-fi stereos. Oh, is that hi-fi stereo? No, it's not. This is hi-fi stereo. Let's try that again. Okay, so nothing which you'd sort of expect because the tracking's out. Can we get anything at all? Yeah, so it is there. So I think with a jolly good cleanup and maybe a tape alignment as well, and do the upper drum, I think this machine will be absolutely fine. So, wow, yeah, actually really pleased with that. So I cleaned the capstan, and I actually ended up in removing the whole capstan flywheel, which is really easy to do, but it's quite difficult to get the washer back on when you push it back through the assembly here, because the washer is actually under a little bit of tension, and I lost it twice. The washer, not my sanity. So, but I managed to get it on. And it is a bit of a fiddle, but it was just so dirty, just really, really dirty. And I just thought, I'm going to be here for hours trying to get this capstan clean. So took it out, give it a good clean, and yeah, it's perfect. Now the slight problem I had as well is the pinch roller. The pinch roller itself is pretty worn. So I've cleaned that, which is fine, but the bearings are poor as well. So at the moment, I'm still not getting great tracking. I've given the tape path a quick clean, but honestly, I need to strip this down. I need to do that upper drum. And also loading is a little bit on the slow side, or lacing, when it laces round, is a bit on the slow side. So that needs a bit of a service, but nothing major, which is great. And to be fair, once I've cleaned that, I've resurfaced that upper drum, it will probably load absolutely fine. I think it's just sticking to the shininess. It's really very shiny around here. So yeah, but I'll do that in another video. Now, I have heard back from Alex, and who I bought this from, and he actually bought this back in the mid-90s from Alan Barnett. And if that name rings a bell, it is that Alan Barnett. And I have to say, I'm a massive fan of the Palsite website. It's just a brilliant resource. And again, the forum is absolutely fantastic. And the information on there is fantastic as well. And I have actually contributed to that as well, and will continue to do so, especially as these machines get older and they're sort of they're getting age-related faults, as well as sort of the wear and tear and the servicing and all the rest of it. There are key components that are starting to fail across these machines. So I will endeavour to keep updating Palsite, and of course making videos about them here as these machines get older. And like I say, it's worth subscribing, even if you don't have any problems with the machine now, or you know, you don't have many Betamax machines or whatever. It's worth subscribing just so you can dip back in the future when you do get a problem and fix it, or at least have an idea of what's going on. And I will be, like I said before, I'll be doing sort of repair type playlists on sort of common faults, and as I find a common issue with the machine, I will make a separate video, or I'll edit out that little bit of section and put that in a separate video, just so it's there for the record. So yeah, wow. Yeah, so it's not perfect, but it's a lot better. That's hi-fi. Hi-fi on there. Hi-fi stereo monitoring, and it's great. But the tracking is still not spot on. And like I say, I mean, I've got to do that upper drum, and I probably am going to have to change that pinch roller if I can find one. I mean, I can put an older one on, but I've got to change the spring. These pinch rollers are interchangeable, but they use different springs underneath the mounts here, so you have to be aware of that. You can't just swap them out, because if you put an old one on there, old style, it won't sit properly. I think that's right. I think it's actually the other way around. But anyway, you need the right spring. So yeah, so I think that is about it. Really pleased to have got this working, and knowing the heritage of it as well is really wonderful, and I'm honoured, honestly, to think that at one point this was Alan's machine, and Alex has looked after it really well as well, but obviously it's got to an age where yeah, several things had gone wrong and it needed a jolly good service. So yes. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe. Really does mean so much to me. We've got some more SLO 1700 stuff to come up, including that machine there, which is a barrel of fun. Honestly, it's new old stock, that one as well. So yeah, see you in another video. Bye for now.